Hey everyone, welcome to another AM1 on Cam1. Today I've got something a little bit different for you. We're going to head into the classroom and I'm going to talk to you about snap. It's written right here, or here, right in the channel description. This is not the channel to watch if you want to learn how to throw, and I still think that's true. That said, there is a thing that I have noticed, and it might be useful to those individuals who aren't perhaps new players or intermediate players struggling to find snap. Before I go any further, I want to say this is not necessarily the correct way to throw. This is not something that you will see Paul Macbeth do. You're not going to see Wysocki or Wazad or Paige Pierce doing this. So what am I talking about? Snapping your wrist at both ends of the throw. I first came across this idea doing field work on my own, but I found I couldn't control it very well at the time. Later on, I saw it presented in a couple of those max distance videos and form critique videos. Anyway, it wasn't suggested as something that you absolutely should do. It was more of a, hey, I noticed this weird thing, sometimes happens. I wonder if there's something to it. Most of the time, we see people cock their wrist all the way through their reach back. It's like they have a hook on the end of their arm. The disc, of course, is going to ride inside that hook. The idea is that if you have your wrist curled like that all the way through the throw, when it reaches the end, it'll put more snap and more rotation on the disc. That idea is sound, but having it curled all the way through the throw might be counterproductive. Because physics, momentum specifically. Let me demonstrate. If we look down at an arm, we might see something like this. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to use this. This is our disc, this is our hand. I got some pieces of tape here that represent our wrist, and this is our forearm. And here they are positioned for a throw. We can see that hook that I mentioned. Now let's take a look at how those pieces behave while they're in motion. As our arm extends backward during reach back, our wrist stays cocked, the disc stays tucked in, and everything more or less moves straight back. When we start to pull forward, our arm is working against that momentum. Watch what happens. Even though our arm stopped moving backward, the momentum of the disc wants to continue going in that direction. So at the very end of the reach back, when we start pulling forward into the throw, our wrist wants to open up. If we allow it to, the momentum of the disc will make our hand flop around at the end of our arm. Now we can combat that problem by keeping our wrist as rigid as possible. But that's not good throwing technique. We want our arm as loose as possible, because loose is fast. We want our arm as loose as possible. So what happens if we let momentum pull our wrist out of position and hyperextend our wrist at the very end of the throw? That would be the reverse. If our wrist hyperextends at the end of the reach back, pulling it forward causes it to flip the other way. See how the disc swings back toward that hook position? The advantage is easier access to snap. Allowing our wrist to hyperextend actually helps it to curl the other way, back inward, once we're pulling through. And this keeps the disc tight to our chest. It allows us to keep our arm loose all the way through the throw because all this happens automatically with the aid of momentum. And all that adds up to an easy way to add more snap. Well, okay, but what does this actually look like when you go to throw a disc? Here's me keeping my wrist hooked all the way through the throw. I can reliably throw about 300, 320 like that. I'm going to take another shot at this one, and I'll put it out there again, keeping my wrist cocked the whole way. You can see that right here in this frame. Here, I'll show you where that shot landed. You can see I'm about 20 feet, 30 feet short of the path. Now, here's a throw where I allow my arm to go loose. And you can see right about here is where I have that arm fully extended. The wrist is loose. And that rip gets me out there about 340 to right at the edge of that path. A little ace trace magic might make that easier to see. Here's another throw with exactly the same disc. It's a Discraft Scorch. I don't turn it over enough and it starts to fade strong, but yet it still gets to the road. This is a curiously stable Lat 64 flow, which I release on an Annie, still gets there. And this adds, I don't know, maybe 20 feet of distance to my throws. It's not a huge difference. And it doesn't fix the fact that I'm an arm thrower. I still don't get my lower body into the throw. That said, it does add more rotation to the disc, which means I can throw at higher speeds. I can get a disc to flip up flat and penetrate deeper forward. Or I can turn it over and have it glide on one of those nice long S-shaped lines. Also means that I can throw more stable plastic, which means I can throw more confidently in the wind. So, should you hyperextend your wrist at both ends of the throw? Well, it depends. If you're someone who already gets plenty of snap at the end of your throw, then no, this is unnecessary. It's probably just going to complicate things. However, if you are one of those newer players that's still looking for that elusive snap, this might be the cheat code that you need in order to find it. And then once you have found it, you probably can eliminate that wacky hyperextension thing. Just keep your wrist loose, keep your wrist loose, because that's the important part. All right, that's all for this one. Stay frothy, my friends.